The squeal of my dad's truck tires on the hot asphalt outside was my 5-minute warning. I sighed, pushing myself away from my desk and the half-finished English essay that glowed on my laptop screen. My room, my sanctuary, was about to be invaded. I looked around the 10 by 12 foot space, trying to see it through a stranger's eyes. To me, it was perfect. The walls were a soft, calming gray I'd painstakingly convinced my parents was mature, and not depressing. A framed poster of the Milky Way hung above my bed, a reminder of the vastness beyond our small Ohio town. My guitar leaned against the corner next to a small, overstuffed bookshelf, its shelves bowed under the weight of sci-fi novels and well-thumbed paperbacks. This room was more than just a place to sleep, it was the first territory I'd ever truly claimed as my own. For 17 years, it had been my bubble, my think tank, my escape from the cheerful chaos of my family. And now, I had to share it. The reason was currently rumbling to a stop in our driveway. His name was Mark, and he was the son of my mom's college roommate, Sarah. Their family was going through what my mom had delicately called a rough patch, which I later learned was code for a messy divorce and serious financial trouble that meant they might lose their house in Michigan. Mark was a year older than me, and for the next 3 months, the remainder of the school year, he was going to be living with us, attending my high school, and sleeping on a fold-out cot 6 feet from my bed. "Lucas, they're here," my mom's voice floated up the stairs, tinged with a forced brightness I knew was meant for me. I took a deep breath. "Be a good sport, Lucas," my dad had said. "It's just for a little while. Help the kid out." The kid. I didn't know anything about Mark except that he existed in a few faded photos in our old albums and that, according to my mom, he was very quiet. I envisioned a sullen, lanky guy who would probably glare at me and hog the bathroom. I trudged downstairs and out the front door. The early April air was still crisp. A beat-up sedan, not my dad's truck, was parked behind it. A woman with tired eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them, Sarah, was hugging my mom on the lawn. And then I saw him. Mark wasn't what I expected. He wasn't lanky, he was built, with broad shoulders and a stance that suggested he spent more time in a weight room than I did in my room. He had close-cropped brown hair and was wearing a faded black hoodie and jeans. He stood by the trunk, pulling out a single, large duffel bag. He didn't look sullen, exactly. He looked blank, like he'd shut all the windows and locked all the doors behind his eyes. "Lucas, this is Mark," my mom said, her voice still too cheerful. "Hey," I said, offering a small wave. "Hey," he replied. His voice was low, flat. He nodded once, then hefted his duffel bag. "I'll show you the room," I said, turning to lead the way back inside. The climb up the stairs felt like a walk to the gallows. I pushed my door open and stepped aside. "So, yeah, this is it." Mark walked in and did a slow, methodical 360. His eyes scanned my guitar, my books, the Milky Way poster. I felt a weird surge of defensiveness, as if he were judging my life. "The cot's over there," I said, pointing to the folded-up metal frame in the corner that my dad had set up earlier. "We can, move stuff around if you want." "It's fine," he said, his tone unreadable. He dropped his duffel bag on the cot. That was it. No comment on the smallness, no complaint. Just silence. That first week was agonizing. Mark was a ghost in my space. He moved with a quiet, efficient economy of motion that was almost unnerving. He was always up before me, his cot already made with military precision. He took 5-minute showers. He had 3 identical gray hoodies that he rotated. He spoke only when spoken to, and his answers were short and functional. "Pass the salt, please. The bus comes at 7:15. Good night." He spent his evenings sitting on his cot, scrolling through his phone or staring at the wall. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken words. I tried to break the ice a few times. "So, you into any sports? You look like you lift." "Used to. Football." "Oh, cool. We could, I don't know, hit the school gym sometime." A pause. "Maybe." I gave up. I retreated into my own world, putting on my headphones to watch videos or write, but I was always hyper-aware of his presence. The soft sound of his breathing at night, the rustle of his duffel bag as he got his clothes, the way he chewed his food so quietly at dinner. My sanctuary had become a shared cell, and my cellmate was a sphinx. The first crack in the wall appeared on a rainy Tuesday night, about 2 weeks in. I was struggling with my physics homework, a particularly nasty set of problems on electromagnetism. I'd been stuck on the same question for 45 minutes, erasing holes in my notebook paper. I groaned in frustration, tossing my pencil down. From his cot, Mark spoke. Which one? I was so surprised I pulled one of my headphones out. What? Which problem are you stuck on? Number 7. The one with the converging magnetic fields. It's impossible. Mark put his phone down, stood up, and walked over to my desk. He looked over my shoulder at my notebook for a moment. You're overcomplicating it. You forgot to carry the mu in your first calculation. It throws off the whole field strength. I stared at him, then back at my paper. I redid the first step. He was right. In 5 minutes, he had talked me through the entire problem, his explanation clear, concise, and surprisingly patient. Whoa, I said, finally solving it. Thanks. I didn't know you were a physics whiz. He shrugged, already retreating back to his cot. I like things that make sense. Rules you can follow. It was the most he'd said to me at one time. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A few days later, I came home from school to find him not on his cot, but standing by my bookshelf. He had one of my well-loved copies of Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama in his hands. This any good? He asked, not looking at me. It's one of my favorites, I said, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. The sense of discovery is amazing. It's about exploring this giant, mysterious alien spacecraft. He nodded slowly. Can I? Yeah, of course. Go for it. He took the book back to his cot and started reading. He didn't put it down for 2 hours. When he finally did, he looked different. The blankness was gone, replaced by a faint light of engagement. So, I asked. It was good, he said, and for the first time, I saw the ghost of a smile on his face. The ending was thought-provoking. That was the key that unlocked the door. Science fiction became our common language. We started talking about books, then about the concepts in them, faster than light travel, artificial intelligence, first contact. I learned that his quietness wasn't emptiness, it was depth. The rough patch with his parents had been a years-long descent into arguments and financial stress. Football had been his escape, but when an injury took that away his junior year, he'd lost his main outlet and his primary social circle. He'd retreated inward, burying himself in math and science, the only things that felt stable. One Friday night, we were up late, debating the ethics of preemptive strikes on alien civilizations a la Ender's Game. The conversation lulled, and a comfortable silence settled over the room. It was the first time the silence hadn't felt awkward. I picked up my guitar from the corner and started idly strumming, playing a simple chord progression. You play? Mark asked. A little, just for fun. My dad used to play, he said, his voice softer than usual. Before, he tried to teach me a few things, but I was never any good. What did he play? Mostly old folk stuff. Dylan, Simon and Garfunkel. I knew a few of those. I started picking out the intro to The Sound of Silence. I played it clumsily, but when I glanced over, Mark's eyes were closed. He was leaning back against the wall, and for a moment, the tense set of his jaw had completely relaxed. He looked his age. When I finished, he opened his eyes. That was it, he said. He played that one a lot. From that night on, our small room began to transform. It was no longer my room that I was reluctantly sharing. It was becoming our space. We pushed my desk to a different wall to give him a bit more floor space. He helped me hang a second poster, a detailed star chart he'd ordered online. We developed a system for sharing the single outlet, a silent dance of charging phones and laptops that required no discussion. We started doing homework together every night. His analytical brain was a perfect foil for my more creative, scattered one. I helped him with his essays for his college applications, a process he'd been completely neglecting, and he helped me finally understand calculus. We'd stay up late, the glow of our laptops illuminating the dark room, whispering about problems and solutions so we wouldn't wake my parents. I introduced him to my friends. They were initially wary of the quiet, intense new guy, but Mark slowly won them over. He wasn't the life of the party, but he was a rock-solid presence. He was the guy who'd remember you had a big test and ask how it went, the one who'd help you move a couch without being asked. He started coming to the gym with me and my friend Jake, and his quiet focus was infectious. One Saturday, about 2 months into his stay, my dad was trying to fix our stubborn lawnmower in the garage, muttering curses under his breath. Mark, who had been reading on the back porch, wandered over. Mind if I take a look, sir? He asked. My dad, sweaty and frustrated, waved a hand. Be my guest, Mark. This thing's a lost cause. Mark spent the next hour patiently taking the engine apart. He cleaned the carburetor, checked the spark plug, and methodically put it all back together. When he pulled the cord, the mower sputtered to life. My dad stared, open-mouthed. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked. Mark wiped his greasy hands on a rag. My dad, he was a mechanic. Before he stopped working. That was the thing about Mark. Pieces of his past would emerge like this, quietly and without fanfare, revealing a history of competence and pain. The biggest surprise was still to come. It was a week before the end of the school year. The air was warm, and summer felt imminent. Mark's mom had found a stable job and a small apartment, and he was scheduled to go back to Michigan in just a few days. A weird melancholy had settled over both of us. We'd successfully navigated the challenge of sharing a tiny room, and in the process, I'd gained a brother. The thought of the room being just mine again suddenly felt lonely. We were lying in the dark, him on his cot, me in my bed, talking about nothing in particular. "You know," I said into the darkness, "when you first got here, I thought this was going to be the worst 3 months of my life." He let out a soft chuckle. "Yeah, me too. I was wrong," I said. "Seriously, it's been cool, he agreed. There was a long pause. "Lucas, yeah, I have something to show you tomorrow. Before I go." "What is it?" "It's better if I show you." The next day, after school, he seemed nervous. He asked if we could have the house to ourselves for a bit. My parents, sensing something was up, made themselves scarce, claiming they needed to run errands. When they were gone, Mark went to his duffel bag and pulled out a slim, hard-shell case I'd never seen before. He laid it on my bed and unlatched it. Inside, nestled in worn blue velvet, was a beautiful, vintage acoustic guitar. The wood was a rich, dark honey color, and it had the faint scars and scratches of a well-loved instrument. "Whoa," I breathed. "Mark, that's gorgeous. You said you couldn't play." "I can't, not really," he said, his voice tight with emotion. This was my dad's. It's the one thing I insisted on taking when I left. It was the only thing he didn't try to sell. He took a deep breath. "The fights, the money, it was bad, Lucas. Really bad. For a while, I was in a really dark place. I didn't see the point in anything." He ran his fingers gently over the guitar's strings, not hard enough to make a sound. "When I came here, I was just going through the motions. I thought I was just marking time until I could go back to my messed up life. This guitar, it was in my bag the whole time. I thought about selling it 100 times. But I couldn't." He looked up at me, and his eyes were glistening. "Then I heard you play that night. You played my dad's song. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't just make me sad. It made me remember that there was good stuff, too. Before everything fell apart. You, and your family, you showed me that. You let me into your small room and you didn't just give me space. You gave me a lifeline." He carefully lifted the guitar out of its case. "I want you to have it." I was stunned. I took a step back. "Mark, no, I can't. That's your dad's. It's too much. That's why I want you to have it," he said, his voice firm now. "It deserves to be played. It deserves to make music in a happy home. Not sit in a case as a memory of something broken. Please, take it." He held it out to me. I felt a lump in my throat the size of a fist. Slowly, I reached out and took the guitar. It was heavier than it looked. It felt like history, both painful and beautiful. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Don't say anything," he said. "Just play something." So I did. I sat on the edge of my bed, cradled the beautiful instrument, and played The Sound of Silence. My fingers fumbled at first on the unfamiliar fretboard, but then they found their way. The sound that came out was rich, warm, and full, echoing in our small room. Mark sat on his cot, leaned back against the wall, and closed his eyes, just like he had that first time. When the last note faded, the room was silent, but it was the best kind of silence, a silence full of understanding and a friendship forged in the most unlikely of circumstances. Mark left 2 days later. We hugged, a quick, awkward, guy hug that meant more than any words could have. His mom's eyes were no longer tired, just grateful. After his beat-up sedan pulled away, I walked back up to my room. It felt enormous, empty. The folded-up cot in the corner was a stark reminder of his absence. But it didn't feel like my old sanctuary anymore. It felt like a chapter had closed. I looked at the guitar, now leaning against the wall next to my own. I looked at the star chart poster we'd hung together. I thought about the forced proximity I had dreaded so much, the invasion of my personal space that I had resented. I had to share my small room. And what happened surprised me. It wasn't just that I survived it. It wasn't just that I made a friend. It was that in sharing my physical space, I had unknowingly opened a door to a deeper connection. I had learned that sometimes, the most expansive things, friendship, understanding, healing, can happen in the smallest of spaces. The room hadn't gotten smaller when he moved in, my world had gotten bigger. And the surprise wasn't that we managed not to kill each other, the surprise was that we saved each other, in our own small ways. And that was a true story I knew I would carry with me long after the cot was put away in the attic.